Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. The Beyond the Gate spoilers for Monday, November 3rd, 2025 reveal tensions running high at Fairmont Crest. Some are losing their composure, while others are being forced to face harsh truths. Key points. Naomi lashes out at those closest to her. Danita struggles under crushing pressure, while Vernon heads to a secret meeting. Eva notifies Leslie about a development involving Ted. Derek seeks help from Shanice, who gives him a sobering reality check. Fairmont Crest is still awash in the gentle light of an autumn morning, but inside Naomi's house, the air thickens like a storm on the verge of breaking. From the moment the test strip showed 2 lines, something in her began to crack. It wasn't joy or the tender anticipation people like to romanticize about motherhood. It was a raw, unvarnished fear. Fear of being bound, of losing control, of being forced to become the very kind of woman she has always despised, a woman who sacrifices so much she disappears. Jacob saw it in Naomi's eyes but couldn't understand it. He saw a chance to deepen their love. She saw a new chain tightening around her throat. She smiled at him while her heart shattered. Every congratulation, every hopeful look from Jacob pushed Naomi deeper into her own private prison. He spoke of mornings with a child, of picnics, of the family memories he never had. But in her mind only one image echoed. Danny, her mother, a solitary woman slumped over piles of paperwork, eyes hollow as she stared through the window. When Bill was gone and never returned. Since childhood, Naomi had witnessed her mother's depletion, the price a woman pays when she chooses love over herself. And now, in this moment, when Naomi looked in the mirror, she saw a perfectly mirrored future. Exhausted, alone, trapped in what others call a calling. Fear turned into fury. Naomi began to vent it on everyone around her. Every word of comfort sparked her anger. Every gesture of care felt like a threat. She looked at Jacob as if he had betrayed her, because he wanted her to become what she had always fled, a mother. Life's unfairness snapped into focus, where men like him remained free, allowed to dream about family happiness, without grasping how much it strips from women. She felt herself standing on the thin border between love and resentment, between holding on and letting go. And when Jacob hugged her and said everything would be fine, Naomi could only feel herself suffocating. Her mind wandered into buried memories, Danny crying in the kitchen at night, the time she heard Bill make promises and then leave, a childhood abandoned within cold wealth. Naomi realized her fear wasn't only born of the present. It was an inheritance from the past. A toxic legacy passed from a weary mother to a daughter trying to appear strong. She had sworn never to let anyone turn her into another Anita. A woman who lived on power, scorned emotion, and in the end faced a terrifying loneliness. But fate was repeating itself, except this time she was the one rewriting the story with a set of contradictory choices. Naomi stood before the mirror and laid a hand on her belly. She imagined a tiny life taking shape, but instead of warmth, she felt only cold. She hated herself for that feeling, hated how her body reacted to something that ought to be sacred. On long, sleepless nights she listened to her heart race, a siren warning that she was losing something. But she didn't know what it was, her freedom, her love, or her very humanity. When Jacob left for work, Naomi sat in silence and stared at the wedding photo on the wall. Everything once promised in that moment had warped. She began to wonder whether she had truly loved Jacob or only loved the idea of being loved, the thing that made her feel different from Danny and different from Anita. But now she saw herself as yet another piece in the chain of women who try to escape their fate only to return to the starting point. The anger rose again, now turning inward as well as outward. Naomi began tearing down plans, canceling appointments, dismantling everything that had once convinced her she could control her life. She withdrew, turned razor-sharp with friends, distant with Jacob, and cold toward the child not yet born. She didn't know what she was doing, only that each act sprang from the fear of being bound. Fairmont Crest might see Naomi as a successful woman weathering a temporary crisis, but no one understood that a war was raging inside her. between the urge to command her own fate and the dread that doing so would cost her soul. Perhaps what Naomi feared most wasn't motherhood itself, but the sight of her mother's and grandmother's pasts. Women who believed they could choose their own path, returning to remind her that no one truly escapes the family's shadow. And in the darkness, as the lights dimmed, Naomi knew the decision she was about to make, whether to keep or to let go, would decide not only the child's fate, but also deliver a final verdict on who she herself was. Meanwhile, the air in the Dupree mansion was so heavy that it felt like you could hear time falling in drops. Anita stood in the great room, watching her husband leave with his coat slung over his shoulder, saying nothing. She knew Vernon was hiding something, and not just work. The way he dodged her gaze, the way his phone went dark the moment he stepped outside, the trace of unfamiliar perfume on his collar. All of it made Anita feel like she was living with a stranger. But what overwhelmed her most wasn't suspicion. It was the loneliness spreading through her body as everything around her seemed to come apart at once. Winterfest, Anita's pride and brainchild, was approaching. She wanted to donate all profits to a fund supporting artists battling mental illness, a decision born of compassion for Barbara, the old friend who once sang with her during the Articulate's glory nights. But every time she looked at the posters and event designs, Anita's heart clenched. She was trying to save others from loneliness while drowning in it herself. Everything in Anita's life was converging at once. Naomi, the younger daughter, had plunged into marital crisis and was ablaze with an unwanted pregnancy. Chelsea, the elder, had turned everything into a farce with a wild wedding that left the whole family bewildered. Martin, her beloved grandson, was lost in a tumultuous affair with Samantha, a woman everyone in the family viewed with caution. Anita felt stretched to the limit like a guitar string about to snap. Every time she closed her eyes, familiar faces paraded past, each needing her, demanding her, while none of them saw that she herself was collapsing. Vernon claimed to be busy with investment fund meetings, but Anita didn't believe it. She had once known him best, how he breathed when tense, each little habit. Now every sign had changed. There was a secret buried in Vernon's eyes, something that made him quiet, distant. It drove Anita to the brink. She began to question everything. Was there another woman? Or was he hiding something even more dreadful? The prospect of an unfaithful husband froze her heart. Yet part of Anita almost hoped the truth were that simple. Because if it wasn't an affair, only one possibility remained: illness. Vernon's father had died of cancer, and in recent months Anita had noticed her husband growing weaker, sneaking medication, avoiding any mention of hospitals. That thought terrified her more than anything. She had lost too many people already, and now, just as she touched the peak of her career, would fate be cruel enough to take the last person she leaned on? Late at night, Anita opened her laptop and stared at the Winterfest plan, hands trembling. Every line and number was proof of a woman trying to control life through work because everything else lay beyond her grasp. She thought of Barbara, who once said stage lights could heal a soul. But now Anita realized the light only made the emptiness sharper. Better to drown in busyness and schedules than sit still and face the truth that her marriage was melting in silence. Across town, Vernon sat in his car outside the hospital. His hands shook as he held the test results. On that cold sheet were words he never wanted Anita to see. He thought of her smile, of the years they had endured together, and his chest tightened. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of Anita's pity. Afraid she would set everything aside to care for him, afraid Winterfest, the dream she had pursued for a lifetime, would collapse because he became a burden. So he chose silence. He arranged to see a private female doctor who would help him hide the illness until after the festival. But that secrecy was the blade slowly slicing the cord of trust between them. At the same time, Anita sat sleepless in her office, the ticking clock an indictment. She told herself she was overreacting, that Vernon couldn't betray her after so many years. But her heart refused to settle. In the stillness, she heard her own voice. If he's lying, then everything we've built is fake. For a woman like Anita, who has staked her life on honor, image, and trust, that thought was more brutal than any truth. Anger, fear, and love braided together, choking her mind. She flung files to the floor, stood in the gold-lit chaos, and, for the first time in years, felt she controlled nothing. Not Winterfest, not her family, perhaps not even herself. Outside, snow began to fall, silent, steady, cold. In that night, two people, one hiding pain, one denying intuition, walked in opposite directions, unaware that when the truth surfaced, it might not only break their love but also bury the trust they had spent a lifetime building. Fairmont Crest never sleeps. The gardens still glow outside, but inside the grand homes, human feelings tangle into faith, betrayal, and calculation. At the center of the whirlpool stands Eva, a woman who always makes others believe she is acting out of kindness, while in reality each step is calculated like a chess move. When Eva sent an update about Ted to Leslie, everyone thought it was a thoughtful gesture. But the truth underneath was far more complicated. Ted had unexpectedly asked Eva to call him Dad, a small detail that opened up a field of buried memories and power. For Leslie, it merely confirmed the emotional bond that once existed between them. For Eva, it was an opportunity. She knew that with a single small act, a brief message, she could make Leslie's heart tremble, shake the composure she had fought to preserve. Eva didn't just send information. She stirred feeling. She wanted Leslie to remember Ted, to recall what they once had, and in doing so, to lose her self-control. Perhaps Eva wanted to box Leslie in, or worse, to watch how Leslie would react as Ted slowly returned to a past she thought she had buried. Leslie is not easily swayed, but when she read Eva's message, her hands trembled. The word Dad, seemingly simple, unleashed a storm. Ted, the man who had once cost her everything, love, honor, even faith in herself, was now presented by Eva, the younger and ambitious woman, as a symbol of atonement. Leslie felt pity, anger, and challenge all at once. Maybe Eva wanted her to know Ted was edging back, but how? Out of remorse, or because he was seeking something deeper, forgiveness, or even a chance to start over. While Leslie was still reeling, another silent storm gathered. Elsewhere in Fairmont Crest, Derek, the man the community had pitted after an accident left him paralyzed, was confronting a truth he himself feared to admit. Shanice, his physical therapist, had discovered what he had hidden for so long. He had recovered. His legs were no longer numb. Sensation had returned. But instead of revealing it, Derek chose silence. He wanted Ashley, the woman who had left him at his darkest, to return, not for love, but for control. He wanted her to pay, to watch her suffer thinking he was still weak, while in reality he rose each day, quietly preparing a revenge of his own. Shanice, who knew Derek better than anyone, saw calculation where despair once lived in his eyes. She had tried to convince him that forgiveness was the only path forward. But now, when he asked her to help hide the truth from Ashley, Shanice felt revulsion. The brutal truth she told him was not only that he had recovered, but that he had never truly been permanently paralyzed. Perhaps his injuries were severe, but not to the point of a lifelong loss of sensation. Derek had chosen to play the victim, binding Ashley in a cruel emotional game. He used pity as a weapon, planting guilt and obligation in her mind day after day, so that when she returned, he could crush her pride under the banner of a second chance at love. Shanice could not bear the deceit. She looked at Derek with a mix of compassion and contempt. Outwardly, he remained a courteous man with gentle words, but deep down she saw the rot of a soul haunted by the past. She told him, bluntly, if he continued this game, he would lose everything. Derek only smiled, thin as a blade. He believed he had the right to dictate emotions because he had once lost everything. He forgot that physical recovery is not the same as healing the soul. As Shanice left, leaving the room awash in dim light, Derek stared at his legs and moved them slowly. He clenched his fists, feeling strength return, and with it, a darkness swelling inside. Somewhere in Fairmont Crest, Ashley still believed he was bedridden, still scourging herself for leaving him. And Derek, once a victim, was becoming a manipulator, a man playing with emotions like a power addict. Amid the tangled cords of secrecy and deceit, Eva, Leslie, Derek, and Shanice seem to be pulled into the same vortex. Each believes they are in control of the story, but in truth it is concealment and pride that are controlling them. And when these secrets finally explode, Fairmont Crest will lose not only its glossy calm, it will also expose the truth that where power and emotion intersect, no one is truly innocent.